Okay, so welcome to the DMPonline User Group. This session is being recorded. The session is going to be on how to make the most of APIs. We thought that given that we had problems over the summer, it would be good to do a refresher on how to get the APIs working. As you can see, the program is displayed on screen, and we are going to go through an introduction. Glenys is going to give us an overview of the DMPonline APIs and how you can, a very quick overview how you can get started. It's not going to be highly technical, but we can discuss at the end whether you feel that there is a need for a more technical session. At the end of our talk, you can ask questions, questions specific to the APIs, and following that, we're going to have a quick coffee break. Then Todd Matusumoto, thank you so much, Todd, agreed to give us a 10-minute presentation on how he designed the APIs, the DMPonline APIs for use at the Erasmus University Rotterdam. It's going to be a somewhat more technical session, but not by much. And at the end of that, we can have a discussion. It can be a discussion about the APIs or more general questions. And there's going to be a wrap up. I'll have a look at the chat in a moment. There are questions coming in. I've put in the chat, for those who noticed, I put in the chat a link to the document, to our agenda. So you can go in the agenda, and underneath the program, you can enter your name. You can enter your city. We all like to know where you are based, pronouns, whatever you feel that it's nice for the rest of the attendees to know about you. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick overview of developments over the summer. So over the summer, we worked mostly on releases 3.1.0 and 3.11. And these releases introduced features such as expand collapse all buttons for multi-section plans, collapsible guidance. We made improvements to downloads, including the ability to download the plan cover sheet. And we also fixed a lot of bugs like the APIs that were not working largely due to problems with a timeout feature. We fixed displays of templates that contain conditional questions. If I remember correctly, these were the conditional questions were coming out blank. And one important feature for me, to which we plan to devote a session, is the research outputs feature. We introduced the research outputs feature. And if you remember, we discussed this briefly at one of our previous user groups. And the research outputs feature enables researchers to enter in their plan data sets, essentially enter information about the data sets produced as parts of a project. And I feel that that's a really important feature. When we discussed it at the time, you liked it, and you kind of liked the implementation, again, if I remember correctly, but you felt that you weren't ready for it. So I think we need to go through that again, because there have been researchers who have come back to us and said, are you expecting me to produce a plan for every single data set I'm producing for as part of this project? So it's important that we come up with an implementation of that. It's ready, we just need to roll it out. Okay. And another major feature we've been working on is not a feature, sorry, it's an upgrade, it's a backend upgrade, and this is us moving from Rails 5 to Rails 6. We're currently at UAT phase, testing phase, and we expect to roll out Rails 6 week beginning the 21st of November. Okay, I thought I'll give you a quick update on the DMPonline team. I think we spoke, when we spoke at the last meeting in April, Patricia mentioned that she was leaving. And Glenys joined us in January 2022. Many of you haven't met her or may be familiar with her name, but not her face. And you're going to see her briefly giving a presentation on APIs. John Pinto still works with us, seconded from Medina. He's attending this meeting. I might get him to give you a wave. Ray Carrick, unfortunately, one of our developers, will take early retirement beginning 1st of November 2022. He had some problems with his health, and I guess he took the wise decision to retire. We plan to recruit a new developer, and we have some projects for which we will add further development effort by subcontracting, bringing in external developers. Okay, somebody's joined in. Okay, and Magdalena Drafiova, our customer relations developer manager, will return in February as planned. I'm very quickly going to go through our current priorities. As I mentioned, upgrades is one of our major priorities. At the moment, we need to do backend upgrades. It may not be so visible to you as the end user, but these are important. So as I mentioned, we're currently working on upgrade to Rails 6, and we're also updating a lot of our tools, such as Bootstrap and Webpacker. We're also moving from Google Analytics 3 to 4, and following all of these upgrades, we also need to upgrade our wiki documentation. Those of you who are familiar with the DMP roadmap GitHub board will find all of this information there. And another major effort for us is implementing machine actionable DMPs, just developing more and more dynamic fields for our data management plans. So, for example, we're looking at integration with permanent identifiers such as ORCID. So at the moment, the researchers enter their ORCID number, but the ORCID field does not link with the ORCID database. So we're hoping that in the long run, we can do this. Integration with a research organization registry. You've probably heard of this, so that people can pick their organization from a drop-down list, and everybody can find their organization there. We just need to make it clear which organizations are registered and have templates and guidance and which are not. Otherwise, it would be very easy to implement. And a lot of DOI mining, finding more and more, integrating with more and more permanent identifiers. And there are features such as using connecting to local repositories, integrating with current research information systems such as Pure. And we have, these are the major ones, but we can think of more examples of dynamic fields. And the reason for this is because we want to treat our data management plans as a kind of basket for permanent identifiers, the link with permanent identifiers, where people can track who has done what work through dynamic fields. Okay, and I think I've given you a good overview of what our priorities. Of course, we always work with you and we take our priorities from you, but I'm now going to hand over to Glenys, who's going to take us through the APIs.
Thank you. Okay. So hello, everyone, and welcome back to our user group meeting. This is a quick demonstration on how you can use DMPonline APIs. Diana already introduced me, but I thought I'd just say hello again. I'm Glenys, and I am a relatively new developer to DCC. And I have, since I've joined the DMPonline team, I have learned quite a lot. So I am very excited to be presenting this to you. Apologies in advance if I speak too fast or too slow. If I'm too loud or too soft, please let me know, because I will accordingly change that. And if you have any questions, please, you can raise your hand, or you can stop me, pause me anywhere halfway through, or you can also wait for the question session, which is right after this presentation. So we're going to start this presentation by first going through some basic concepts. I'm sorry for those who are already experts on this topic. If I say anything that is wrong, please correct me. But this is just so that everyone can understand what we're going to be talking about, and then we can move on to the demonstration part of this presentation. Okay, so what are APIs? So again, this might be a little obvious, but API stands for Application Programming Interface. And so a sort of simple description or definition of an API is, as you can see in this diagram over here, programmers use API to send requests to a certain application to retrieve the data that they want. So once they do that, they can use the data in their own application for whatever task that they would like to use it for. So an example of this and how it works in DMPonline is that you can use APIs in DMPonline to get data, and you can use it in your own software application. Or, for example, I will show you some examples about how you can use it, so you will understand a bit more of that. But before that, I will give you, okay, sorry, it's a bit slow, but hopefully we're on the same slide, which is the examples. So a few examples, I will give you more examples on how institutions that who subscribe to DMPonline use APIs. But first, I will give you a more simple example, which is you can use APIs to track usage statistics. So this can range from the number of users, or the number of plans, or possibly even the number of users that are using a particular template, how many plans are created with the template, and so on. Number two, you can use the data that you collect from using the APIs. You can find out about how popular a template is and how many plans have been created with a particular template, and you can use that information to maybe add more guidance or pay close attention to the template, or so on. You can also use the APIs to transfer DMP metadata, and I will explain this once again a bit more in the upcoming slides. So the transfer of DMP metadata can be used mainly with version 1 of the API. I will explain all of that, don't worry. So currently there are 2 versions of the API. If you are not already aware of it, there's version 0 and then there's version 1. So this is sort of my I've put this table together to explain the similarities and the differences between version 0 and version 1. So as you can see here, version 1, it was initially introduced to satisfy some of the org admins requirements, and they wanted to be able to have access to the full text of a user's plans. So version 0 does that for you, and version 1, on the other hand, is mainly, it was introduced so that you can transfer DMP metadata between systems. And as you can see here, it complies with the RDA Common Standard Metadata Schema version 1.0. So that's sort of the one of the main differences between version 0 and version 1. You won't get what you get with version 0 with version 1. And the next point is endpoints. With version 0, you've got plans, guidance, templates, departments, and statistics. With version 1, you've got slightly different endpoints. Heartbeat, I will explain that. Heartbeat is basically just to check if the API is alive and okay. And authenticate is for an important step with version 1, and I will show you how to use that in the demonstration. And plans and templates are similar to version 0, but they give you a different set of information. So the requirements that you need to be able to test or use these versions of the API With version 0, you just need the API access token. If any of you aren't familiar with this, I will show you how to get your API access token. And with version 1, you will need both an API access token plus an authentication token, which is why you will need this authenticate endpoint. Again, I will explain it. These are just a few examples of what it might look like. These are just GET requests that are actually further explained in the documentation, the API documentation that we have. I think Diana, maybe you could put a link to the slides in the chat now so that they can take a look at the documentation, or you can take a look at it later. That's totally up to you. But just to let you know that there's more information about both version 0 and version 1 in these pages. All right. Okay, so how to use the API? There are two ways that you can use the API. One is RESTed, which is a Firefox, which is an add-on in the Firefox browser. And the other way to do it is to use the command line. So I know that sometimes the command line might seem a bit intimidating, but once you get to know how to use it, and once you try it a couple of times, I think you'll enjoy it, because at least that's what happened with me. And but RESTed is a more visual way for you to use and test the API, and you might prefer that based on your experience or preference. So I will show you both on how to use it both ways. So this is going to be the sort of schedule that we will follow. First, I'm going to show you how you can use version 1 using RESTed. Then I'm going to show you how you can use version 1 using the command line. And then I will show you examples of version 0 with both RESTed and the command line. I am going to focus a bit more on version 1 and give you more detailed steps for that, because it has an extra step, which is the authentication token, as I mentioned previously. So if you get that, you will be able to easily use both version 1 and with the steps that you have for version 1, you can use version 0. So the focus will be on version 1. Following this, I will give you more use cases that we have collected from institutions who subscribe to DMPonline on how they use the API in their site. Okay, so how to use API version 1 with RESTed and the command line. Okay, so first things first, you will need a Firefox browser and you will need the RESTed add-on. I have given a link here. Once again, this will be made available to you. It's very easy to set up. You just need to go in and click on a button which will automatically add it to your browser, and then you will be able to use it. So you'll need that. And then you will need org admin privileges, and you will need to have API access permissions. So if you don't have that already, just remember that you will need it to use the API. So the API access token that I mentioned, this is the way to get it. And this is an example of what it looks like. So you go to, once you log into your DMPonline account, you can go to edit profile. You will see the API access tab if you have the correct permissions. And this is your access token. So if you don't already have one, you can generate it. If you have one, and if for some reason it's not working properly and you think you need a new one, you can always regenerate it. But otherwise, you can just go ahead and copy this, and that will be your API access token. Okay, so how to get the authentication token. So for version 1, you need both the API access token and the authentication token. So we have the API access token now, but we need the authentication token. You can get it using RESTed or the command line. I'm going to show you an example first on how you get it using RESTed. And then we can, I'll show you how to do it with command line as well. So these steps will make more sense in the next slide, because it has a picture where it shows you exactly what you need to do and where you need to put what. But just to quickly run through these steps, you need to set the request type, and it has to be a post request when you're getting the authentication token. and you will need the link with the endpoints API v1 authenticate. You will need one header, and then you will need a request body where you will have to enter your email ID and your API access token. So hopefully this image, is it there yet? Oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm hoping that this image makes more sense. So this is where you will set the request type. So this is rested, and this is where you will set the request type. You will put in the URL over here, and you will add one header, and the information is in the previous slide and on this. And because this is a post request, you will need a request body, the type of which will be custom, and then you enter the rest of the information and make sure that you use your email ID and your API access token. This is just a reminder that you will need to use your credentials, because it's not that we don't trust anybody here, but I have changed my credentials since I took this screenshot, so this isn't going to work for you anymore. So please enter the correct credentials, and once you click on send request, you will be able to see a response to 100, and this is your authentication token. So it's a long line of jumbled letters and numbers, and you need to copy it and keep it safe, because that will be your authentication token for when you use the version 1 of the API. But this the validity of this token doesn't last long. So if you this is to say that you can't copy this token and then use it over the next few days. It won't last that long. You'd have to do this step over again to get a new authentication token. But this is just an example of what it looks like, and that's your authentication token. That's all you will need to use the version 1 of the API successfully. Okay, I see a raised hand. Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry, maybe let me know if it's not a place to ask the question, but so if we're trying to use v0, then we have to pass in the token in the headers, right?
Yes, that's correct. And I will actually show you an example of v0 as well.
You will? Okay, perfect.
Instead of well, when you do the get request, you will be using, in version 1, you'll be using the authentication token instead of your API access token.
Right.
But you difference, hopefully. But if it's still unclear, let me know and I will explain it further.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, thanks. So yeah, so this is just a quick example of how to make a get request. Get request is just going to retrieve the information that is requested. Once again, I've just put information here on the steps that you will need to follow, but the next slide has an image which will make things a bit more clear. So I'm using the example of with the endpoint plans. So I'm making a get request plans, and I will have to add 2 headers. Because this is version 1, it will be better, and then you will have to add your authentication token, not your API access token. So once you do that, you can click send request, and that would be it. Just a quick point to note that I have used in my examples dmponline.dcc.ac.uk, but you can use the URL that is your institution's URL, and that would be just fine, as long as the endpoints are what you need. Okay, so this is once again just an example. You set the request type given the URL that you want. You've got 2 headers, and as I mentioned, this is the authentication token because this is version 1. And once you've entered all the required information, you click on send request, and this is an example of what you would see if you run a get request as I have done over here. So this is with rested. I'm going to do the same thing with the command line. For those of you who would like to use the command line or are more comfortable with that, I will explain how you can do that. So step 1 might be a little obvious, sorry about that. And step 2, so this is just the only line that you need to get your authentication token if you're using the command line. So again, you will need to enter your email ID and your API access code, because remember, we're going to, this is the step to get the authentication using the command line. So oh yes, I wanted to make a note here that when I first used the command line to try to get the authentication token, constantly ran into errors, and it was mainly because the quotes were kind of mixed up when I was using it in the terminal. So I wanted to make it clear to everyone that you might have the same issues, especially if you're going to copy this one and you're going to paste it in your terminal. It might not always be very clear and direct. Your terminal, your command line, it might not recognize the quotes, like text editor sometimes changes it. So I would suggest that if possible, you can type in the quotes instead of just copying and pasting this line. That might solve the issue that I had if you have the same issue. But yeah, this is just an example of what it would look like when you run the command on the terminal. And you should be able to see something like this. You'll have a bunch of information, and at the end, you'll be able to see something similar. Hopefully, this example will help you recognize an authentication token immediately. So this is what it would look like on the command line when you run it. And this, again, is a bunch of jumbled letters and numbers. That is your authentication token. So you can copy it and you can save it, and you can use it for your as you use version 1 of the API. So just like how I did it with RESTed, I'm again using just a simple GET request for all the plans in version 1. I'm sorry, using version 1. So this is the line that you need for that. And once again, it's important to note that you will be using your authentication token here, not your API access token. That is the main difference with version 0 and version 1, as in with the steps that you need to follow. So again, I'm using the URL. I'm using this URL. You can use yours as long as the endpoints are correct. And yep, this is just an example of what it would look like when you type it into the terminal. And yep, this is just an example once again to give you an idea of what it might look like. This is the end of an example when I run make a GET request with these endpoints. So yep, I hope that helps. So that's version 1 with RESTed and command line. Version 0, I'm going to do it much more faster, and it's going to be shorter, because you will understand why it's faster and shorter, because it's basically the same steps but just with a slight difference. So with RESTed, you'll have to so again, I used the GET request as an example with, again, plans, but version 0 this time. So you set the request type, you give in the URL, and then you had 2 headers similar to version 1. But the important point to note here is that I'm using the API access token. I am not using the authentication token, because you don't need that for version 0. So this is my API access token, which, if you remember, you can get from your edit profile API access tab. So yeah, that's one of the main differences. And oh yeah, one thing that I wanted to mention is that RESTed definitely has some limitations, which is why we don't claim that it's the best one out there. So if you do know any better ones that you think work better than RESTed, please let us know, because we're always willing to learn and try new things. So, but for now, for this example, we've used RESTed, and this is just to say that it does have limitations, but it's still a good way to kind of get yourself familiar with APIs and what information you can get from it. So that's with RESTed. This is version 0 with RESTed, and this is a quick example of version 0 with a command line. It's very similar. The only difference, again, is the API access token, not the authentication token. And this is just an example of, this is the end of the result when you run API v0 and get the plans endpoint, basically. So that is the example that I have for you for version 0 with the command line. I hope the image is clear and it helps. So as I mentioned, I'm going back to the use cases that I said we'd be looking at in the end. So these are a few use case scenarios that several of the institutions who subscribe to DMPonline have shared with us. But first, I wanted to bring to your attention, if you're not already aware, we do use the APIs on DMPonline to power the usage statistics page. So this can be found in the drop-down menu for org admins. This is a very useful page, and it visually represents like the current statistics in I would say an interactive way. So it's just an example of how we use the API for DMPonline. We use the DMPonline APIs on DMPonline, and it's also important to note that this requires extra development effort, because if you want to get the information and if you want to implement it in a way with a new idea that you have or something like that, you will need extra development effort. And so Dr. Christopher Tibbs and Joachim Philipson, I'm not sure if you're on this meeting and if I have completely butchered your pronunciation, I'm sorry if I have, but they have both given talks on how they use APIs in previous user groups. So I've attached the links in case you any of you want to check it out if you weren't there before, or if you want to look at it again. And some other examples are version 0 is used to pre-fill some information and from the plans or templates, and then create storage requirements accordingly. It's used to assign users to the right department, and it's also used by one institution to monitor plans to anticipate feedback requests, which is a great way to use the API. All of these are great examples of how you can use the APIs in your institution. And okay, so I'm finally at the end of the presentation. I'm sorry if I overloaded you with too much information or bored you with too much information, but please feel free to ask any questions. And I hope the slides will be easy to follow when you try to use the API on your own, either with Rested or the command line. And we will have a quick, I think, question session now, followed by a coffee break. And then we will have Todd Matusumoto from Erasmus University Rotterdam to show us how they use DMPonline APIs. So thank you once again, and I hope that was useful. Diana, back to you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Glenys. Who has questions? We have time for questions. Was it a bit too technical?
Maybe I have a question.
Yeah.
So I mean, I also it's more like I'm trying to also use it as we speak, just develop something on Python real quick.
Okay.
What I notice is that when I grab it, so I managed to authenticate just fine. But my plans, I only get 10 plans, which are from 2017, and we have way more plans than this.
Right.
What is going wrong?
This is with version 1?
No, version 0.
Okay, John, I see you've turned your video on. I think you wanted to say something. I think you're on mute. Wait, still can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, John. We can hear you now.
Are you sure those are others? Are you a org admin?
Yes, I am.
Right. So it's right. I'll have to look. Well, I'm off this week, but I have to look next week, and I'll have. It's possible that some of those plans are private or something, but maybe someone could check after the meeting and see what those. Just to run it locally and find out, because I don't think can't give you an answer offhand. But
no, I understand that.
Yeah.
I was thinking that exact same thing. So there's certain restrictions. You might see many plans as this, but if the user has not made the plan or public, or hasn't reached a certain point in the plan, or is a test, it tends to kind of filter things out. So you only get certain plans, even if there's more in the pot, if you put it this way.
Yeah.
But we can look to it if you don't mind.
I've got Todd Matsumoto, I think, on the in the chat mentioning that it could be pagination, which I also thought it might be because I think they had something related to that. And
yes. Todd, that's correct. Yes, because you only see 10. You'll see 10 at a time. So you'll have to put pagination. Well done. Sorry.
Okay.
So there's a you can count your DMPs and then divide by a pagination, and then you'll have to loop over that that range, you know, incrementally. I don't know, let's just pretend 0 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to, and recall for those
for each one.
for the DMPs in that specific set, and that's how you can build up.
Okay. All right, I think I can work with that then. Thanks.
We do have
okay, Jacques. Oh, sorry, Glenys, go ahead. Go ahead.
We do have a script that we can share with you, Jacques. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, that's right.
We can send you the script that you can use to pipe data into files. Actually, I wanted to show that as an example here, but I wasn't sure we had time. But it's something that related to what Todd just mentioned, where you can count and then you can put it into separate files, like you can get it downloaded or something like that. I will, if it's all right, I will explain a bit more with the script, and maybe I can get your email ID if you can put it in the chat or something like that. We can send it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, I hope everybody got a chance to grab a cup of coffee. So welcome back. We are now starting with Todd's quick presentation on the design of DMPonline API feature for use at Erasmus University Rotterdam. Thank you very much, Todd.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm using the DMPonline. This had come from a request from our data stewards, a couple of data stewards. And they basically wanted to know for two specific templates that we were using, what the number of answers were for multiple choice. And so they wanted me to count up what's the distribution and how are people answering the questions. And these mainly had to do with like data repository options, whether personal data was being used or legal information needed to be used. I'm using the V0, whatchamacallit, API. And let's see, I can share my screen to give just a brief look at what what this report looks like. So after I run my script, I see that I have a mistake. It will just basically output some basic information. What is the template type? How many DMPs did I get? And then it will go per section, the questions, and then the answers. And then with each section's question, it tries to figure out how many were answered, how many were not, and whether whether multiple answers were allowed. For instance, a multiple choice question that allows any number of answers to be selected, which for me was a bit problematic, and I didn't count those in total. I only counted a 1, so couldn't make it perfect. Then for each question, you have your answers listed, and then the number of answers distributed over those questions. And it's a very simple, no bells or whistles kind of report. And then here you see the second template that they wanted answers from. And it's basically the same thing. So to do this, the first thing I had to do was get all our DMPs and filter out our DMPs that are marked as test. And then, yeah, after messing around with trying to come up with ways to get this data and trying to think about how I could actually have the data in some sort of data type, this is going to be a bit technical, is I finally chose a Python dictionary. I'm programming in Python, but I decided to use a dictionary to do this. And basically, I kind of created, well, a sort of, yeah, boilerplate dictionary that would indicate when something that I wanted was present in the amount in the plans that were given back. So what you see here is you see this dictionary that basically gives a skeleton view of the template type, the section number, the question number, and then per the question, I just have a default setting that says that multiple answers are false. And then using this, I loop over all of the DMPs, and then if the template type is 4.3, that says, okay, I need it, then I'll step in and iterate over that, the contents of the DMP, and say, oh, here's section 3, I need that. And it will start to build up a basic dictionary, another dictionary that holds all my report data. And so the report data dictionary that I create in its first stages, it was too difficult for me to try to just report everything at once. I tried a number of times and my brain just, well, I failed. So I had to break this up into different parts. And what I did was each of my report dictionary is kind of like it keeps on adding on more things. So I just looped over the information more and more times. So from my boilerplate dictionary, I then create a report dictionary that just has this stuff in there. And then I go back and I add the section information that's in a DMP. And I just boilerplate that now with, okay, section questions are going to be there, and I can pick out some information. But as you can see, the questions is just another dictionary, but it's empty. But then after that, I go on to go over that again, filling out the questions, finding the questions related to here, to the boilerplate dictionary, then filling in the question with the text, and then I prep that dictionary with answers. And then again, I iterate over it again, and then I fill in the answers that each question has. And along with filling in the answers, I begin to add zeros for my count values. And then once everything is built up, then it will finally fill all of the values and count, fill all the values for the answered questions, not answered, and then per answer the value that I counted for what was filled in on the DMP. I can imagine some people's eyes are probably rolling in the back of their head. I don't know how technically complicated this is to the users, and if it is, please just shout out and I can try to answer that, because I can imagine that we kind of left the simple side of things away, because I guess I can talk about my experience with doing this. So there's the technical side, and then there's the experience side. And if I kind of reflect on that, that might help somebody who's trying to program for a report. And what I noticed was you really need to, or I really needed to find out how the output of the DMP plans were structured, and that took a lot more time than I would have guessed. And the other thing that it did is it led me to thinking about a lot better ways our university could have structured their DMPs. For instance, we have a lot of places in our DMPs where there's a free text field, and those free text fields come with a lot of HTML formatting all over those. And pretty much wherever there was a free text field, if you wanted to extract information, the complexity of that problem really just goes through the roof. In terms of being able to strip out everything, for instance, let's say that your answer has bullet points and numbers in it and stuff like that, then all that information is interesting when a user is reading it, but in order to extract it as data, it just is stuff that gets in the way. And it's very, very difficult to extract what is the meaning of free text fields. No question? Okay. So in doing so, it led me back to the data stewards to just start a discussion about, like, what are strategies we could use to kind of use the strengths of the data, what's being outputted from the DMPonline versus, you know, what kind of to avoid. We had to start thinking about all these different things. And now there's an ongoing discussion about, okay, if we're going to make another template, you know, how would you structure your questions so that they basically stay multiple choice in most cases, if you possibly can, and if not that, then a limited free text field with no HTML formatting on it.
Sorry to interrupt. There's a question.
There
Sorry.
is a question. We can take questions at the end, if that's okay. So Todd,
Well, it's fine for me because I'm kind of told my story here. So
all right, okay,
like
so you're almost done.
Yeah, questions.
There are questions, yes. So the first one was Jacques. Jacques, can you?
First of all, this is fantastic. I don't know if you can share the code, the Python code, but that would be really, really helpful.
I could, but you might be like, okay, we'll start over.
I've done that myself before, so yes, it might be difficult, but at least to get the gist of this. But let me understand just once again. So you created a dictionary that is sort of correlates to each particular template.
Yeah, so like when I said that you need to really know these DMPs, this dictionary that I have here that I'm highlighting,
yeah,
I had to go back and then really understand how does the template structure into a section. You have to find out where your data chunks are, and you have to really understand at every level. And the levels are, you have a plan, you have a section, you have a question, and then you have answers. At each of those, if I could look more back in detail on the output, you know, each one here, you have to think about, well, how do I want my, so I know I'm going to have questions, but I don't know what I want back yet. And that you have to think about yourself, like, how do I want to see this stuff back? And so I chose this format, and this is then where you're sort of departing from the stuff that comes out to creating your own kind of your own view on the data.
But then do you have like a, let's say this dictionary that is going to correlate to the particular plan, and then you loop through all of the plans and basically append the information into this dictionary, or do you create a dictionary for each plan and then go over all of these created dictionaries to compile the information?
No, it's one report data dictionary, but
Yeah.
then I loop over many times to grab the information
items.
from
Yeah.
the DMP, chuck it into the report data. I mean, the report dictionary in large part basically still looks the same as this.
Yeah.
See, here's question 3, there's 3, right? Only it's padded up with a questions dictionary. And then when you get to the answers then are padded up with an answers dictionary. So it basically still looks like this, it's only a lot more decorated. And then if you look at the report itself, it also, you know, looks a lot like my dictionary. So here's 4, then you have your question answered, then their answers, you see. So this question here, I add on these bits, then there's these answers. This is a new dictionary. These are all the contents of that dictionary. Do you understand what I'm
Yeah, no,
am I being clear?
No, that's
Okay.
quite clear actually. So my next question is, I think you made a really good point of how to structure things, because something that I find very interesting but very difficult to get is the information on the kind of data that they have and the formats that they're using. And I noticed that we usually have a table that is being embedded within the DMP template, and I don't think there's an easy way to, let's say, convert this table into a CSV sort of format, especially when there's you know, it's mostly string data that is completely unstructured. Do you foresee a way to be able to sort of make it so that they can input the data directly into this and make it easier to catch this information?
No, not if it's going to be staying, if there's no other choice but to use a text. Well, one thing, yeah, forget it. I'll go back. One thing is if you're going to have a text area, don't allow any HTML formatting on it. Just have it straight text. So you only have to deal with line breaks.
Yeah.
That way you can stay with the text much easier. But I mean, I tried to strip out tables. The problem is you never know when somebody's done with their HTML decorating. So, I mean, in one case, it's like, oh yeah, I got a table. It's got 1 row, it's got 1 column, and then I'm done. But another one's got 1 row, 1 column, 1 cell with another table, some bullets. So when are you finished?
Yeah.
And to clean all that out, I just went back and said, don't have this. Try to formulate the questions better. Well, better. That's really poor of me to say. Try to think really strategically in terms of how do you keep the data basically what you know, pre-made answers, and then only use your text fields when it's absolutely necessary. And if it is a text field, try not to use any decorating on it at all.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
Okay, Jacques, Martha, excuse me. Jacques, are you done with your question?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much.
Okay, I know, you're very welcome. There are 3 people waiting. Robin, you've been waiting for some time. Sorry, Martha. Robin?
Okay, it's a bit more general. Thanks for giving that example. It's really useful to see how this, you know, might come to be used locally. So I'm thinking about, like, our university template is probably all what and how questions that would kind of encourage long-winded answers. And I'm wondering, I think I've seen maybe in other sessions here that other people have like these multiple choice, very tight, closed questions. And, you know, do you do this? Yes, no, multiple choice answers. And I'm wondering how well that goes down with funders sort of doing things that way. I mean, I guess we'd be using funder centered. Is this kind of a way to move towards making it less agonizing for the user, where it's simple answers rather than, you know, all this essay type of answer to some of the questions? So, and that might be for yourself, and maybe Diana has, or others have insight on that.
Yes, there is an issue because the way we've structured questions, we've gone ahead, John and Martha, I'll come to you in a moment, sorry about this. There is a tension there. The way we've structured the question is we've allowed funders and universities to insert a narrative, the kinds of questions they want in there. And the plan builds a narrative, you know, and the freedom is, you've given the freedom to the user to insert their answer pretty much as text, but that inserts unwanted formatting. And I think we need to think about that. Yes, we could encourage both universities and funders to insert more yes and no multiple choice types of questions. We could get tighter on the kinds of questions we allow in there. But we were quite an early tool, and early on, that's the kinds of templates, and those are the kinds of questions that both funders and universities wanted to insert. But it looks as if, for the sake of technology and for integrating with other tools, external data, we will probably have to insert more fields that are more prescriptive, allow less ad lib. And there is a drive towards machine learning. I think we're all, machine learning, sorry, towards dynamic data, towards readable fields. And I think we're all coming to understand that. So we're moving in that direction, but it won't happen overnight. John, you wanted to say something? Martha, sorry, I'm coming to you.
Thank Todd, because Todd put up with a lot of bugs in our APIs, and he pointed them out to us, and we forced us to fix them. And I think we made it like harder than it could have been. And thank you, Todd, and thank you for this presentation as well. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, Martha?
So I guess this is more into a point of view. So thank you, Todd, for your presentation, because it's, as John said, it's been quite useful having someone with a pretty good input on how to use the APIs. And I can feel your pain when it comes to be able to extract data. We use TinyMC as our editor, and we do actually restrict certain types of scripts or HTML tags. We do remove them before we put them in the database, but because we need to then retrieve that structured text, as you said, as people putting bullet points, tables into the actual answer back again, it kind of has always been a catch-22, as you know, in order to fulfill some people that want to be able to add tables as an answer, you have to have the functionality. But then at the same time, for this kind of particular thing, it begins to show us that, you know, it's all about how you actually present the question to the user. So DMPonline has the functionality to just have a yes, no, bullet points, you know, checklists, whatever. The problem is that how the actual questions are being presented and actually being entered into the tool, which then makes your life, as an example, a lot harder, because you have to do a lot of fishing and cleaning. And unfortunately, it kind of makes it harder for us as well, because we have to use TinyMC, which is not the easiest to kind of maintain in a way. So it's quite interesting how the navigation of DMPonline, which is now 12 years old tool, that, you know, is being developed back in the day already thinking of this, but obviously it had to kind of accumulate and make sure that everyone could actually have their questions. But yeah, your input, and I wish there was more people like yourself going to their universities and saying, you know, this plan needs to be rethinked the way the questions are asked, in order to then be able to extract the data that we actually want.
If I could break in, I mean,
yeah, please.
I'm not saying ixnay, you know, the free text. I think it's got a place.
Yeah.
And I think that brings up a good point. What you just said, Marta, is that, you know, and Diane, is that, yeah, it's got a place. And then that just makes me think, yeah, it's a real thing between the crafters of the DMP itself. I mean, here's the DMP online tool. And when you start making them, you're going to make many of them, but you really need to ask yourself before making it, what do we want to have a report on? Exactly. What do we want to have a read on?
Yeah.
What are the things, like from a funder or from an RDM manager, data steward, that, you know, like a funder has a number, maybe that shouldn't be stuck in a, you know, mentioned in a free text field, you know? So you need to know beforehand what everything's made out of. And I had no idea about it. That's why the exercises taught me a lot about DMPs and then how are DMPs, but also the wider scope of things. There's a total place to have free text. So I don't say,
yeah, it's about it.
It's
the balance that it needs to be presented, and that's why it makes it so hard to then harvest that, is to find out what's what. But I truly believe that the actual community in overall is working towards that kind of balance, and we'll get there. A few years ago, DMPs were not something like this, so we'll get there. Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah. Shall I stop sharing my screen? And I'm happy to share the script. I just don't know who you were, which was asking. But yeah, Jacques. If I can,
asked, yeah.
If I can get his email
I think you can
address.
send them to us. I think you can send them to me, for example, and I can share. Don't worry.
Yeah. And I don't guarantee that if you turn it on, it's going to work.
That's all right. I'll do what I can, but thank you so much. Yeah.
It's still very useful. Very useful. Yeah. Thank you so much. Anybody else has questions, not necessarily about the APIs, anything else they want to raise? Okay, Nikkei will also be interested in the slides. Thank you so much. Okay. Any other questions? Naim, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
It's a more practical question, actually, to one of earlier presenter, I think, Glenys, about the retrieval of the contents. So I wonder if it's possible to export a PDF and retrieve it via an API call. Is that something that's already available?
No, I don't know. You couldn't do that. Hello, can you hear me? No, you can't do that.
Yep, John answered that. Thank you.
Sorry, so it's not possible.
No, it's not possible.
And is there something that you can consider including it?
Probably not, actually, but we could consider, because we work in a group with people in the US and Canada and France and stuff, and Belgium as well. In fact, I think probably your university as well. But we'll have to bring it up. But I wouldn't guarantee that would be, because that makes getting PDFs and all that would be much more difficult, I think. How do you put it into a JSON format?
Yeah, well, for some practical reasons, in our workflow, we needed that. We want to integrate this DMPonline tool with other systems. And there we wanted to have a ready to be used PDF version of DMPs.
Which other systems, can I ask? Sorry, John, which other systems you're thinking of integrating with?
Yeah, those are in-house systems. One example is SharePoint's applications we are using. And
SharePoint, yeah.
So with API calls, we can get a lot of information about some DMPs. But yeah, we wanted to have this export that is ready to be exported and put in our system, rather than getting all the contents and exporting them into PDF ourselves. That would be really great.
Yeah, because I mean, that's exactly what Todd said about having, just even having HTML causes a problem. So putting a PDF would be,
Yeah.
would just.
I can understand that. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to include. But please discuss that, and if I mean, if it's possible, that would be really great.
Okay, we have 1 more minute for another question.
I have,
Yeah.
oh, sorry,
Todd,
go on.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd. Go ahead.
Well, it's a couple of observations. Just when I was doing this report, the section numbers are starting with 1, and from a programmatic perspective, really helped to have them start with 0. And then I thought, okay, maybe it's indexed like, you know, a list, and then there's something that would be in the section that kind of said it's human number, I suppose. So because yeah, it was a little bit like, oh man, now I got to reset everything on my indices and stuff. And if you could just, it would allow for like enumerating over things and stuff. If it were 0.
So you want the section numbers to start with 0?
Well, like when you're programming, you can loop over things. If you do like an enumeration and stuff, it will start on 0, and that's quite handy. And you're looking for numbers because you're looking for sections, right? Mm-hmm. When it's 1, it starts at 1. Then you got to do this thing of like adding 1 to get 1. Then you can look for it. Otherwise, you're out of sync. And yeah, that one was one just kind of bothered me.
Okay. And the other observation?
That's pretty much it. I had an issue with extra text. So let's pretend like you have a multiple choice. I don't know how you would solve this, but you have a multiple choice. Somebody answers it, but then there's extra information, which is I believe the keyword text, which is also part of the answer. And I don't know, that wasn't, I don't know what you would do, but it was like, oh man, is there a better way that could be structured? I don't know, but it was kind of.
Is that for the other kind of option when you have the option and then you press other and then you get the text to enter what other? It's a bit of a tricky one.
Exactly, I know, and it's also hard to count. So it's like, because all of a sudden you go from, oh, I'm in an accounting situation because there's multiple choice, to now we're at a text situation. I don't know what to do. It just kind of was like, got me in the craw where it was like, oh, what do I do with this? So anyways. Okay,
Chris. You're on mute, Chris.
Hi, thank you. Many thanks to Todd for making a very complex script quite easy to understand even for non-techies like me. But one question, or well, maybe a comment, and I'm just tying together perhaps a couple of the questions that have been asked. It may or may not satisfy the use cases, but one thought that I wonder about for the script, at the moment, Todd's report counts the number of instances. You know, for example, how many people have responded yes or no to a particular question? Is it possible to write the script so that instead of returning a count, it actually returns a list of the DMP URLs that satisfy a particular response? So that might be useful, for example, if for some reason you wanted to follow up with certain researchers who are handling, for argument's sake, very sensitive data, and they've said yes to that option, then if you had the DMP URLs, okay, it's not the full plan, or at least as a DMP admin, you can go in and take a closer look. So I wonder if that's a useful idea or a way of, and well, is it feasible?
But what for me to use? Well, I'll just take it that, yeah, you're talking because you're mentioning a script, and I built the script, but I think it is possible. But it's these discussions that you need to have with your data stewards. So for instance, yeah, we got the bare bones of, now we have these accounting piles, right? And from those piles, you could use the raw information from this stuff to then say set profiles, you know, but you'll need to have the piles also, because maybe you could say, okay, here's somebody that's going to be going, that says they're going to be doing in a repository, but then I don't know, some other conflicting thing that's another answer someplace else. You would have to know those then to create the profile. That's how I'm looking at it in my head. But I do think it's feasible once you know how to find out the weights, I suppose, how things are weighted per question in a way. And after you do that, then yeah, it's kind of stage 2. You could probably say, all right, we're looking for this kind of profile. Anything above 16 on this, then we know, I don't know, something's getting overused, or I don't know. Maybe you can find out whether something was being used in a wrong way through a combination of answers to particular questions.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, not wanting to add yet further layers of complexity, I think maybe you might break it down and say there are particular types of reports, rather than having to do the weighting that you describe. You might say, let's run a report that's very focused on this type of question and pull out all the DMPs that satisfy, say, a response yes for that one issue, and then deal with that one issue at a time, because it might be different support teams who deal with different issues. And
Yeah.
if that sounds like a feasible option, then that would be something worth having a closer look at, I think, at least for us.
Technically, sorry,
yeah.
Todd, go ahead.
Go on.
No, I say technically, I imagine that would be possible. Yeah, unless Glenys, John, any of you want to comment on this?
Nothing other than, as John mentioned for the previous question, that we'd have to take it up with the roadmap team as well and just have a discussion before we finalize. But we can certainly discuss it and talk about that and get back with more information.
Great. Thanks so much.
And we can end the session. Thank you so much, Todd, and thank you all for your answers. I'm just gonna quickly share screen. Right, so as we discussed, I've made the notes of all of your questions, and as we discussed, Todd will share his code, and I have a note of people who are interested. There was Jacques and I think Nike. Apologies for mispronunciations, but I can see no reason why we couldn't share it with everybody. So Todd, if you send your code to me, we can try and put it online. We'll also share slides and recordings. So I've made a quick summary of all of your questions with regards to APIs. Todd, you said the free text fields with heavy HTML coding make it difficult to extract data. We've taken a note of that. We do impose some limitations on the HTML formatting that is used, as Marta mentioned. But it looks as if we have to move more towards yes, no types of questions or multiple choice questions. Formatting like tables can also get in the way. There was a question about exporting PDF via APIs to integrate with SharePoint at one institution. We'll have to raise this with a wider DMP roadmap team, but we can imagine that that's difficult. Todd, you said section numbers should start with 0 ideally. And
section question and answers.
Section questions, you said.
Yeah, so sections has a number, that's a 1, and question has also a number, which also starts at normal, and then answers does not have a number on there. So those two.
So answers, you want answers to have numbers as well?
No, answers don't need to have numbers, but where if there were going to be, I mean, thinking from looping over things from the perspective of the programmer doing stuff, it's handy if the numbers are starting with 0.
Okay.
It's just a small change. It's nothing big, really.
Okay. Extra text in other type of questions, they can create difficulties as well. Chris asked for the ability to return a list of plans that satisfy a particular answer. For example, does this plan contain sensitive data? Yes. And we would like to produce reports on that. Again, we'll take that up with the wider team. I can't see why that can't be done from a technical point of view. As I said, we'll share slides and recordings. And if you have any further questions related to this session, please email them to the help desk. And forthcoming events, I'm so sorry that we're overrunning slightly, but forthcoming events, there's the 15th November. We'll discuss the revised plan creation wizard. And if we get a chance, I'm hoping to bring to the table for discussion the research outputs feature, because I would like to roll that out. It would be really useful for the end user. It might create some difficulties initially for administrators in implementing them. The next event we plan to do that, it's on end of January, towards the end of January. Initially, we're waiting for timing of the IDCC conference, but I'll circulate the date. We'll set the date and circulate it to you. And the event after that is 20th of March 2023. It's a half-day workshop co-located with the RDA plenary. And I'm hoping that it will be a hybrid event and we get to see each other. We'll try to maintain all of our events online, because it's nice to everybody can attend them, but I think it's about time that we can see each other as well. The event will take place in Sweden. I'm trying to remind myself which city. Somebody remembers which city, please kick in. I think it was Gothenburg. Yeah, okay. That's it.